Welcome everyone, it's nice to have you. So today's topic could be disappointment, particularly being disappointed in the world, which some of you might feel given the recent events, global events. Might it be the pandemic or current protesting or all the violence and illness and trouble that there is in this world, whether it is in our own families or in our communities or a global issue. Being continuously confronted with such news or topics can be disappointing. And such disappointment might even lead to renunciation. And such renunciation might lead to peace if it is followed properly. Or it might, on the other hand, lead to anxiety, depression, worry, despair, and even suicide sometimes. So I would like to explore this way of how it may lead to peace, such disappointment, and how that might be helpful. Or what kind of reflection might lead to an experience of yourself that is more beneficial than just worry and anger and fear and hate and all these kind of things. So no matter what happens in your life, you can make use of it in a way that leads to long-term benefit and happiness, or it may lead to long-term misery and suffering. And it all boils down to our actions. This entire world is made by action. Our entire human experience, whether it be the experience of ourselves as an individual or our family, our communities, or the experience of the whole world, it is all made by action. And actions originate in the mind. A synonym for action is intention. The Pali word for actions is kamma, the Sanskrit word is karma. You might have heard that, yes? Many people say, oh, this is karma, it's his karma, it's her karma, right? It does her right. Karma simply means action, if you translate the word. Just action. And the Buddha defines it even. He says, karma is intent. Intention is action. So any little intending of the mind is an action, constitutes an action. Every time your mind moves a certain way, it is acting a certain way. And that action is followed by results. Every single moment of mind is action. Every single moment of mind leads to result that are in line with this action. So let's say you're directing your mind in a way that gives rise to anger. That is an action that leads to anger, and that anger then is an experience which leads to further action, which are in alignment with the nature of this experience. Let's say, for example, you're experiencing anger. At the same time, resistance to that anger will rise up within you because it's highly unpleasant. Nobody likes the feeling of being angry. So what we do then is we get angry at that anger. And we start resisting the anger itself. It's kind of a funny play that takes place. And you can become aware of this. You can see clearly, That is what is happening currently. You might become afraid of fear. There's a lot of people who had like severe panic attacks or something like that. They often are traumatized by that in a way. They become afraid of having another panic attack, and that might turn into this downward spiral until they don't even dare to leave their houses anymore. Because they're so afraid that something might happen. And so every single moment of the mind, to come back to that, is for most of us, yes? It is not necessarily action. It's not what I said. But for most of us, it is action, constitutes action. So we are intending all the time. The mind is constantly intending. Right now it is intending. There is wanting and not wanting. It's always there. And it always creates this experience of time. Like I am here and I exist on a timeline. I'm heading somewhere. I'm becoming someone. Hopefully I will reach my goal soon. Hopefully the world will be a better place soon, etc., etc. So we must make that happen. Now I'm sitting here, I might listen to this talk, and I want something out of that. I'm here to get something. And most of us, we don't even realize that we're continuously intending. And it is this continuous succession of intention moments that shapes our experience in our life. And because we don't realize that, we then blame external circumstances for our own experience. So we might blame our neighbors for my anger. Or I might blame my wife for my discomfort. All that is, we're familiar with that, right? Like blaming others. It's not that I'm pointing fingers right now and say you shouldn't do that, but just become aware of how you do that. How we tend to move the responsibility for our own experience outwards. We move it away from ourselves. We project it onto others. I feel like this because of the weather. And it's so easy and happens so fast. I feel like this because, name it. It might be more skillful to say, I feel like this because I don't know how to feel different. I have never learned that. It's a good beginning. Now, admitting our own ignorance is a start of wisdom. We can then build from there. But until we admit that, there is no getting better. We can't change ourselves to have a more enjoyable experience of life, hopefully. Well, if we don't look at the problem. And the problem is me. I mentioned it last time. Problem is always and only me. I call this realization taking radical responsibility for our own experience of life. As long as we feel victimized by either the world around us or our own feelings or our own thoughts, it doesn't work. As I've also said many times, suffering is not a happening. It's not something that happens to you. It is something that you do. To come back again to karma, it is karma. It is action. Suffering is an action. And as long as we turn a blind eye to that action, as long as I'm not looking at what I'm doing to myself right now and analyzing it carefully, it will continue. Most of the actions that we take every day are impulse actions. We're acting out of impulse. We react. We don't really act. And we react due to the way our mind has been conditioned. And the mind can be conditioned. If you repeat, for example, a certain thought, and in the beginning you don't believe it. But then you keep repeating it, stubbornly, mindlessly, constantly repeating it. Eventually you start believing it. Slowly, you start kind of giving it some credit. It might be true. Some demagogues, they are very good at that. They just simply repeat. They repeat things. And eventually people start wondering, it might be true. They start giving it credit slowly. And as they hear it more and more and more and more, it buries itself into your mind. And it starts to live there. And then starts to unfold. And you don't even notice how slowly you give it some credit. And then this idea starts to take a hold. And then it builds up, it becomes bigger and more fat. The more you feed it with your attention, the more fat it becomes. The more it takes place, right? The more place it consumes. And eventually it might fill your entire body and become an action. And then it becomes this repetitive action. You're possessed by an idea. Some of the most dangerous things that could ever happen is being possessed by an idea, particularly if it's an apparent good intention. As the saying goes, the way to hell is paved by good intentions. It is very accurate. We all want to be good. We all want to be loving, and we all want to be kind. But unless we are loving, kind, and good to ourselves first, the world will never be a good, kind, and loving place. There is no way. Walking around, trying to make everybody good, loving, and kind. It won't do the trick. Writing love on your t-shirt won't do the trick. Posting loving things on Facebook won't do the trick. But unless you can, and love, in my opinion, starts very often with patience. Can you bear yourself? Can you sit down with yourself and stand the mess that has been accumulated for how many years? And sit there and face it with all honesty you can muster. Without looking away, without trying to run, without trying to overpaint it with some nice ideas, but to take it in raw, unfiltered, honestly. I suffer. There's the only conclusion you can come to. I suffer. The body hurts, it itches, my mind races around, has no order whatsoever. No matter what I do to myself, it just doesn't seem to get better. The longer you sit, the more unbearable it becomes. That would be the necessary honesty. Who was that? I think it was Descartes or somebody like that who said like all the problems of humanity arise because man is unable to sit still in a room by himself. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was that Descartes? Or who was that? I don't know. Anyways, it doesn't matter. It's a good saying. We are unable to sit with ourselves quietly in a room. Why would that be the case? Well, simply because it's unbearable. Why is it unbearable? Because you are full of problems. If you had a bag full of demons in your hand, would you unleash it onto the world? Would you open the bag and let the demons fly into the world? But that's exactly what we do. Our body is the back, and our mouth is the opening, and our hands are the opening very often. And it is our good intentions that open the back. We need this kind of honesty. When we call ourselves a spiritual practitioner or meditator, to face our own shadows, to face our own darkness, and bring light into it, to illuminate it with awareness, to become aware of it. There's not much more you need to do, that's the good news. But look, and don't look away. The more you look, the more you understand. The more you understand, the more you can become free from it, released from it. The more you can release from it, the more you relax, the more you settle down. And it's not that kind of relaxation that arises because you've created yourself some nice circumstances. Like kind of, I switched off the TV, so therefore I feel relaxed. But it's a kind of relaxation that's there no matter what. Whether the TV is on or off, whether Facebook is on or off, whether you're praised or blamed. Then you can truly stand up for yourself. Because you've been honest enough with yourself to face your own mess and to stay with it, not to run away. It gives you the real chance to release all that. To go beyond it. To go beyond all the stress and suffering of waging a war against who you really are as a human being. Which is very messy, you know. Human beings are very messy. We don't need any particular proof for that, right? It's all over. The mess is all over. It's like you can't deny that. And if you look down with yourself, you can't deny it either. And here's the good news. That's normal. It's okay to be messy. It's all right to be weird and freaky and strange and have weird thoughts. And it's okay to have hate. It's okay to have anger. It's okay to have all that. The problem is when you express it or suppress it. That's when the problems begin. When you're suppressing it, it's another word for self-destruction. When you're expressing it, it's another word for destruction of the world. So what to do then? I can't express it. I can't suppress it. What should I do then? Can you let it be? Without doing anything to it. Without pushing it down, back down into the shadows. Or without pulling it out of the shadows. Just don't do anything to it. A thought comes and the thought goes. Now, the practice and the training is in learning not to do anything to that thought. Easier said than done. As the saying goes, it's simple, doesn't mean it's easy. But it's worthwhile. That's what it is. Learning that skill to be able to release things, not to perpetuate them through being unconscious about them, but to release them, to let them go, leads to peace. And once you're at peace, that's one problem in the world less. That's one person that people need to worry about less. But it starts in your family. You know, if I'm at peace, my wife doesn't have to worry about me. That's good for her. It's good for me. It's good for the relationship. I'm not a walking problem. That wherever I go, I bring my baggage. I bring my darkness, my ignorance. And by darkness, I mean ignorance. I don't mean like evil traits of mind, like hate and so forth. I mean ignorance. At the base of all those evil traits is ignorance. It is not knowing yourself. If you can know yourself, all those evil traits, they vanish. They have no more footing, no more ground to stand on. Because the ground that these traits stand on is the self, the sense of me. I am angry, isn't it? It's not angry. Because if it just would be angry, there is no problem. But it's I am angry, and here is the problem. And I wish that. Here's the problem. That's where it all begins. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. It's funny that people who would say that do exactly that. That's ignorance, that's darkness. Not looking at yourself, not seeing the cause for suffering in yourself, but seeing it elsewhere, seeing it somewhere else. That's true evil. And that's the devil's play. The devil is clever. If you want to take that figure of the devil, right, to just use it in a symbolical way. The devil is not like this kind of stupid personality that comes to you and offers you candy in his van to pull you in and say, come, taste my candy. It's really nice. That's stupid criminality. The devil is very clever. So clever that he infiltrates our mind. And he makes it feel like me, when there is no me. When there is just things happening. There's anger, it arises, it passes. There is no such thing as me being angry. There is anger, yes, and it arises and it passes. As soon as it's not personal anymore, no more problem. Problems are gone. It's this aspect of identification, identifying with these things that come and go, that leads to trouble. Because then the expressing and suppressing starts. Then the aversion and the attachment starts. It needs the ignorance, not knowing yourself first, for the entire world to spin the way it does. And yet we run around and we destroy things and we have righteous anger and all that kind of stuff when there is no such thing as righteous anger. There is anger. There is pain. For me, it's quite simple. There's suffering and there's release. It's just that. Everything else has gone way too far. Throughout the millennia, thousands and thousands of years of human history, it's a spinning around of pain. Why? Because we refuse to look at ourselves. We refuse to look at our own actions. And we continue to blame. As long as that doesn't end, there is no end of suffering. Period. Then the world just keeps going on the way it does. There is no end of suffering in blaming. Blaming ideas, blaming people, blaming this, blaming that. There is no end of pain in blaming. There is an end of pain in taking responsibility though. Taking responsibility for ourselves, taking responsibility for our own minds and our own pain and letting that go, freeing the world from the burden of my own pain. And I stand up for that. That's what I stand up for. I'm not one person that backs down and says, oh, I let everything arise and pass. It is the truth that our own actions cause our own experience. It doesn't matter what you believe, though. It's as simple as that. If you look, that's what you will find. Anybody will find that. What I do shapes my life. It shapes my feelings, it shapes my experience, it shapes my thoughts, and with that shapes my environment, I stand up for truth. And the truth is simple. Either we suffer or we don't. And either we are expressing suffering or we don't. And an expression of suffering, what do you think will it lead to? Look at human history. Isn't it a continuous expression of suffering in many different facets and colors and ways? When everybody wants exactly the same two things, happiness and the end of suffering. That's what unites everybody. Every living being wants the same, whether it's a dog or a fly or an ant, a human being or an elephant, it doesn't matter. They all fear pain. They all fear suffering. Nobody wants to die. And everybody desires happiness. They all desire to be at ease and peaceful. This is something that unites us. And it would be wise to look at that fact clearly within ourselves and see, all I want is happiness. And all I don't want is suffering and misery. What can I do with myself? How can I free myself from this burden? How can I be at ease? And with that, hopefully, free your own household from your own problems, and then the community, and so forth. That hopefully answers the question as well as spiritual practitioners, should we act or should we stay passive? Yes, you should act, but the direction is not this way, but that way. Take responsibility for yourselves, care for yourselves, guide yourselves, be kind to yourselves. I guarantee you it will end the problems in your family and your community, depending on how powerful that is. So that's all that comes to mind for today. Are there any questions? You might not have any questions now, but if you do have any questions anytime, please feel free to write them to me. I can read them out in class and discuss them here. And until then, I wish you a nice week. Look after yourselves well.